The Digital Production Buzz is brought to you by KeyFlow Pro, media asset management software designed to meet the needs of workgroups at an affordable price.
Tonight on The Buzz, we are looking at data security. As more of our business and media assets move online, what can we do to protect them? Tonight, we talk with the experts to learn more. We start with Larry O'Connor, the founder and CEO of OWC. Larry has strong opinions on the cloud and how to keep our files secure. You'll definitely want to hear his opinion, especially about encryption. Next, John Tkacezewski is the co-founder and CEO of FileCatalyst. They specialize in keeping files secure when they are in transit, moving from one server to the next. He shares his thoughts on making sure your files transfer quickly and safely. Next, Michael Gilliat-Smith is the CEO of Fortium Technology. They make MediaSeal, which protects files during production and post using high-speed encryption. Tonight, he explains what their technology does and how it is used. Next, Pierson Clair is the Senior Director for Cybersecurity and Investigations for Kroll. Pierson investigates enterprise-level data breaches and tonight shares his ideas on what we can do to keep our computers and media secure. Next, Michael Kammes, Director of Technology for KeyCode Media, looks at real-world techniques we can use to improve our security. Sometimes common sense is more important than high tech. All this plus James DeRuvo with our weekly doddleNEWS update. The Buzz starts now.
Since the dawn of digital filmmaking,
authoritative,
one show serves a worldwide network of media professionals,
current,
uniting industry experts,
production,
filmmakers,
post-production,
and content creators around the planet.
Distribution.
From the media capital of the world in Los Angeles, California, the Digital Production Buzz goes live now.
Welcome to the Digital Production Buzz, the world's longest-running podcast for the creative content industry, covering media production, post-production, and marketing around the world. Hi, my name is Larry Jordan. Last night, my wife sent me a text. A coworker clicked on an email, supposedly from Dell, informing her that her computer had a problem. The problem wasn't her computer, but that the email wasn't from Dell. It was from a hacker who stole her credentials and then stole all her data. These data theft stories are becoming all too common, and for those of us in the media industry, when you combine the need to keep unreleased media secret while moving more of our business online, all without any kind of dedicated IT staff to help us navigate the minefield of network security, well, this creates a perfect storm, resulting in data theft and loss. When it comes to digital media, security looks at files two ways: files at rest and in motion. Files at rest are stored on a server or hard disk. Files in motion are in transit from one server to another. The security needs of each of these is different, and we'll talk about both of these tonight. There is hope, however, as you'll discover on tonight's show. Most hacks are not caused by ultra-sophisticated tech bad guys, but stupid thinking on our part. Sometimes it's complacence, sometimes a lack of knowledge, and sometimes just not verifying the link we're about to click. Tonight, you'll learn a variety of techniques that you can use to keep your data secure. By the way, before we start, I want to update one of our interviews. I talked with John Tkacezewski 2 days ago. This morning, FileCatalyst announced that NBC Olympics, a division of the NBC Sports Group, selected FileCatalyst to transfer event footage at accelerated speeds as well as facilitate remote production workflows for their production of the 23rd Olympic Winter Games in South Korea. This is very exciting news, and I congratulate John on their selection. And now it's time for our doddleNEWS update with James DeRuvo. Hello, James.
Happy Thursday, Larry.
And a wonderful Thursday to you. It is good to hear your voice again.
Likewise.
What have you got for us?
It seems that we can't go a week without a new camera announcement. Everybody has to put out a camera, and Arri has announced yet another addition to their Alexa line, the Alexa LF. It comes with a full 4.6K sensor that fits somewhere in between the Alexa 65 and the Alexa XXTW. It's got a native resolution of 4.6K at 2.39 to 1 or 4K at 16 by 9, shooting ARRI RAW in open gate mode. 14 stops of dynamic range, and it also comes with 8 neutral density filters that you can manually insert, and it'll give you frame rates of up to 150 frames per second.
Oh. Well, what do you see as ARRI's strategy with this camera?
I just think they're rounding out the Alexa line, adding a beefier sensor to a smaller camera with a lighter footprint. If I had to guess, I'd say this is designed for those shooting documentaries out in the field. It'll give them a lighter camera that'll enable them to shoot better images, so they'll get more bang for their buck.
All right, that's the newest camera from ARRI. What's next?
Blackmagic updated their hardware and software twice this last.
Twice.
They've got firmware updates with bug fixes and support for the new Ursa broadcast camera, plus raw import from Sony's Cine Alta line and the Panasonic VariCam cameras get better metadata translation. And DaVinci Resolve also got improved support for Dolby this week. Multi-camera viewer performance has been improved, and there's faster ProRes encoding. And they have streamlined support for their new Fairlight audio application. It's a huge amount of updates in these two firmware improvements.
Well, James, 2 updates in 1 week is a pretty fast response.
Indeed, and there were planned updates as well. Many of the new features were the result of user feedback. Blackmagic is that kind of company that just loves to listen to their core clientele to make their products better. Hardware or software, it just doesn't matter. They want a good idea wherever they find it.
Okay, Blackmagic Design's got 2 new updates, both hardware and software. That brings us to our third story, which is...
Break out your mobile phone because Moment Lenses is having a short film competition. It's called the Moment Invitational Film Festival, and they've invited 10 high-profile YouTube creatives to showcase a lot of their work, but they're holding a competition to find the 11th filmmaker to be featured in this first annual Invitational Film Festival. Those interested need to submit a 3-minute short film shot on your mobile phone with the theme of suspense, and the winner will get a share of over $75,000 in gear, cash, and prizes, and an all-expense-paid trip to New York to be featured at the film festival.
Well, James, what do you see as the significance of a film festival that's geared toward mobile phone users?
Mobile filmmaking is really hitting the mainstream with filmmakers these days. Even Steven Soderbergh just wrapped his latest feature that he shot on the iPhone 7, and even Oscar has taken notice. So with the filmmaking contest like this, it's pretty clear that nobody has any excuses anymore to going out and making something. As Ansel Adams once said, the best camera is the one you have with you.
Those are very true words. All right, that's ARRI, Blackmagic Design, and Moment Lenses. What other stories are you following this week?
Other stories we're following include DJI's next Mavic drone may have a huge 1-inch sensor. Facebook sees an opportunity to poach several content creators during YouTube's adpocalypse, and the Disney-Fox deal may be in a little trouble with the feds.
Where can we go on the web to read these and all the rest of your stories?
All these stories and more can be found at doddleNEWS.com.
And James DeRuvo is the editor-in-chief of DoddleNEWS and joins us every week with the DoddleNEWS update. Thanks, James. Talk to you next Thursday.
See you next week.
When you can't find your media, you need a media asset management solution. KeyFlow Pro. This simple but powerful software is designed specifically to help you organize, track, and find your media. Whether you work alone or part of a group, its intuitive user interface helps you easily store, sort, search, play, annotate, and share your media using team-based shared libraries over a network. Its wide range of features are all at a very affordable price. And with the new 1.8.3 update, rescanning is up to 10 times faster. Plus, KeyFlow Pro is integrated with macOS notifications, enabling you to collaborate faster and smarter, all in real time. KeyFlow Pro is available in the Mac App Store, or get a 30-day free trial at keyflowpro.com. KeyFlow Pro. Simple, elegant, and surprisingly affordable. Larry O'Connor founded Otherworld Computing, which is also called OWC, in 1988. Their website, which you may know better, is macsales.com. OWC is both a reseller and a developer supporting all things Mac for, a long time. Hello, Larry. Welcome back.
Hey, thanks for having me back, Larry.
So, Larry, tonight we're talking about security for our media files, both locally and on the web. It seems like every day brings news of yet another data breach or a hack. What are your thoughts about keeping our media secure?
You know, you have encryption, of course, on your Mac. I mean, there are options there, and, we're doing a lot on our own side to bring software aid, up a little bit later this year to take advantage of Apple's latest 10.13 encryption with APFS. But in general, quite honestly, I mean, I really believe in keeping things, near and dear and close. Encryption and anything you do, through data that restricts access to it is great for security until, years go by and, a different scenario emerges where possibly the person who created the encryption, set the password, had a hardware key, is no longer to be found, and that media potentially is, locked out, for all, future purposes. Keeping important things. I mean, there's things that be put on the cloud, and there's things that, quite frankly, I think should really stay on drives, for transport.
Well, one of the conversations we're going to have a little bit later in the show is with Michael Gilliat-Smith, who works for a company called Fortium Technology, and they've developed encryption technology which can be taken off as well as applied. So we'll hear more about that in just a minute. But I want to come back to your concept of keep things local. Increasingly, we're seeing both in Avid and in Premiere the idea of collaborative editing, where a team of people are working on a project. How can we support team editing if we don't put our media out for the team to be able to access it?
Well, not so much putting it out for the team to access it. I mean, you certainly have local collaborative editing. Now, if you're talking about people being able to edit around the world, and now you're talking about cloud services, certainly you don't have the local resources or bandwidth typically to support that kind of distance. But going back to the basics, I mean, back to base really. It's going to come down to how important is that source material. What is the value of that source material? When it's on the cloud, I mean, you just run into all sorts of different risks that you don't have when it's locally controlled data. And really going back to the basics, you don't hear about. I shouldn't say it's been extremely rare in all the years that the media's been being created. We've heard of a stolen hard drive or worse, a lost drive that somebody's recovered, and suddenly there's a new bit of content that wasn't released yet, being circulated online. With data that's available or stored on the cloud, it's a little bit different story.
Well, let's go into that just a little bit. Do you think we can safely store media in the cloud, or should we avoid the cloud for media altogether?
Again, it depends upon what the purpose is. What I put, the actual unedited source of anything on the cloud? Probably not. Would I put something up that's, for a production release that's not been, that's not yet published, that's being ready for master? I think sending on a hard drive is a better way to go. Would I send data over the internet, on a secure network, to a media house? No, absolutely, positively. But trusting the cloud as a distribution point, I think it's already proven to be risky with a couple of high-profile thefts just in the last year or so.
Well, then, what should if our goal is to have collaborative editing? Let's just pretend that that's the case. Let's say our goal is collaborative editing, and if we're ruling out the cloud, then how do we share media amongst the team?
Well, if you're talking about collaborative editing, I guess I'll take a step back. Certainly I can understand large groups and people spread around the world. You've got a different scenario, but how many folks, in terms of collaborative editing, truly have teams that are not localized?
In other words, most editing teams are going to be working out of the same physical space?
Seem to see a lot of that. I mean, it's not to say that there aren't exceptions, but the majority of the customers we talk to, those teams are pretty tightly based. Now, you may have somebody independently that's doing VR, special effects, different kind of post-production work that's honestly not really the cut side. But how many teams are truly separated by distance, where they're not working together in a facility where they can control that data firsthand?
What are your thoughts on transferring data? Let's say that the production team is on site somewhere outside the studio and the editors are back in the home office doing editing. How do we get the files from where they originate to where they're being edited? Once again,
bandwidth is, I would argue, is still a pretty big factor there, and there are solutions to buying multiple 4G, and when 5G comes online, multiple 5G together. And now it's going to come down to expense. I mean, how fast and how important is it to transmit that data? I have no problem with transmitting data over the internet from one point to another point. I think that can be done very, very securely. Putting it on the cloud for download, though, is a different matter altogether. And of course, going back to what's always worked historically, putting data onto a fast drive that can be shipped is another pretty well nearly foolproof solution.
That's a very true point. You can move 10 terabytes over FedEx a whole lot faster than you can transfer it on the web.
Absolutely, and with not to plug our new Thunderblade, but the new Thunderblade, which is our properly long showed as been demoing as the Viper. It's up to 8 terabytes. You can transfer, roughly 1 terabyte, per minute to this product. I'm sorry, per 10 minutes. So 8 terabytes in a little bit over an hour. You can duplicate drive to drive, and then it's very easy to ship that, to a destination for exceptionally fast transfer off, or even use it if the destination is editing it, you're keeping it back up on site.
Well,
have another one transfer.
Well, that's a good point. Before we run out of time, tell me about some of your newest storage products, especially for high speed. What have you got?
Certainly, the Viper is definitely a Thunderblade. So I keep calling it Viper. I had to say first, but it's the Thunderblade, which came out of it was a Viper project. That's a highly portable flash array. This sustains data rates of up to 2,800 megabytes a second, and sustained realistic sustained write speeds at 24 to 2,500 megabytes a second. And when you take a look at today's data needs, I mean, we're talking to people who generate anywhere from 500 gigabytes to a terabyte of data per hour, shooting 4K or AK 120s. Has become apparently a very popular format. It's in demand. Netflix for one. That kind of data generation, a product like the Thunderblade, allows, number one, very quick on-site duplication, and then the ability, even on the same day, to turn those video shoots around, get them out the door, and to their destination. And I can't imagine how long it would take to, if you're dependent on uploads. I mean, that's in perfect conditions wherever you are. That's a heck of a long upload time, transfer time to get that from point A to B.
Now, this new toy is, excuse me for interrupting, the new device is called the Thunderblade?
It's called yes, sir.
And it's got how much capacity to it?
Up to 8 terabytes.
And it's shipping now?
It is shipping. The 4 terabyte version just began shipping. The 8 terabyte model began shipping mid next week.
And have you announced a price? We have, because it's shipping. What's it cost?
The 8 terabyte is $4,999, which is honestly an incredible price for that much high-speed flash.
Mm-hmm.
The 4 terabyte model is $2,999.
$2,999. And for people that want more information about these and other OWC products, where can they go on the web?
You can certainly visit owcdigital.com or check out these products on www.macsales.com.
Two websites, MACSALES, macsales.com, or OWC Digital, owcdigital.com. And Larry O'Connor is the founder and CEO of OWC. Larry, thanks for joining us today.
Always a pleasure, Larry.
Take care. Bye-bye. FileCatalyst was founded in 2000 to create ways to improve and secure file transfers. John Tkacezewski is the co-founder and the president. Hello, John. Welcome back.
It's nice to be back. Hi, Larry.
Give me a quick description of what FileCatalyst does.
FileCatalyst is a software application that optimizes and simplifies and secures large file delivery over the internet.
There's two types of security. There's security for files that are being stored, called files at rest, and files that are being transferred from one location to another, called files in motion. Where does FileCatalyst fit?
We're definitely on the files in motion part. Our goal is to make sure that the files that are being delivered are secure as the data is moving from one storage disk to another storage disk via the internet.
How do your products help us with security as our files are in motion?
We have built several different ways of securing the delivery. So I think one of the more important one would be like a presence of a reverse proxy.
I think of a proxy as being a small version of a large file. It doesn't have the same resolution, it doesn't have the same data, but it is a visual representation of what that file looks like. Is that what you're meaning by a proxy here?
No, it's not exactly the same thing. Here we're talking about proxy in terms of internet security and network security. So a proxy in terms of network and internet security, it means a server in the middle or in between the actual service that contains all the data and the client application that runs on the internet.
What value does this proxy server have in securing our files?
You're not exposing, first, the biggest value here is that you're not exposing the service or the server application that contains all your media directly to the internet. Everything goes through a secondary, smaller connection that even if someone hacks into that secondary, smaller service, they are not really getting anywhere with that because it's just a proxy service they're getting into. There's no real media residing there.
Can I think of a proxy server as like a card catalog in a library? Is that the proxy server's got little pointers in it, but there's no actual data. The books on the shelf are separate from the card catalog.
Exactly. So if you think of that and then you lock up your card catalog, and if someone, let's say, figures out how to get into the card catalog, it doesn't necessarily mean they'll have access to the books.
Well, to get right to the core of it, what can we do to ensure that our systems are more secure?
I think most of the breaches, I don't have a statistic here to quote, but most of the breaches that happened in the recent years were all instigated by human error. That means that somebody clicked on a link they shouldn't have clicked in an email, or maybe they lost a laptop at the airport and there was some sensitive information on it. Once potential hackers get that, what I call that beachhead, into someone's network, and then they will try to hack deeper and get into those really, really sensitive materials that you have. So I think the biggest way to secure someone's network is the human factor, it's the training, it's the continually talking about cybersecurity with your staff and your suppliers, and making sure that the human error is minimized. This leaves those hackers a lot less room to start hacking. Because a hacker without any kind of information ahead of game, they will probably not attempt to get into your network. They must have to have something already to get them going and get them started.
John, I listen to you talk and I start to wonder, are there any standards that we can follow for maintaining security?
That's something that I think media industry is behind on other sectors. So, there is some standard. For example, in the UK, there's the DPP standard. that came out, but it's only predominantly used in the UK. There's nothing really centralized or globalized body that would dictate security standards for media. I can think of another industry, for example, health and health sector, where you have the HIPAA or HIPAA standards, where if you want to exchange any kind of data, you have to adhere to these standards, that there's a body that presides and sort of keeps everything secured. But nothing like this exists in media. And I think I can't stress enough the lack of that in the media sector.
Who should take the lead on that? Who do you think should be responsible?
I think it has to be the biggest players in the sector. So anybody who generates a lot of content, thinking here of the large the largest media companies, probably should be the ones spearheading something like this, because this is ultimately, it's in everyone's benefit, but that will benefit the most to them.
And for people who want more information about the security and other services that FileCatalyst can provide, where can they go on the web?
They can go to our website at FileCatalyst.com.
That's all one word, FileCatalyst, FileCatalyst.com. And John Tkacezewski is the co-founder and president of FileCatalyst. And John, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Mathew Gilliat-Smith is the co-founder and CEO of Fortium Technologies, which he started in 1999. Fortium provides digital content protection solutions for the film, entertainment, and broadcast industries. Hello, Mathew. Welcome back.
Hello. Good to speak to you.
Providing digital content protection solutions sounds really impressive. What does Fortium actually do?
We have specialized over the years in providing digital security to the film and TV companies. One product we have is for optical disc security, where we protect Academy Awards and BAFTA screeners. And the other side is digital media file protection for encryption at rest on post-production workflows, before they've hit the cinema and after they've cut the film.
The optical disc protection we've talked about in the past, so I'm glad that you are still supporting that for those of us that are releasing optical discs. But today I want to focus on protecting our files at rest, which means they're being stored somewhere as opposed to being transferred. How would you categorize the security threats that we're facing today?
There's kind of three areas in content security at the moment. One is 30% of breaches, of the most serious breaches, are caused by human error still. So people accidentally making content available through a link and not realizing they've typed in the wrong name. The second area is the cyber threat, which is where someone's clicked on some email and some malware gets into the system, even if you're behind a firewall. And what happens is they get held to ransom because they've got the content. And we heard about that last year on a number of occasions. And the third area is pure theft, where someone from the outside pays someone on the inside to steal content. And the person on the inside has got access to that content by the nature of the fact that they work together. Whereas with things like MediaSeal, access control by individual user and file, it prevents exactly that sort of thing happening.
What security do you provide here?
It's called MediaSeal, and it's an encryption at rest product. And one of the big challenges in the industry is you have lots of different systems. You have your Avids, your Final Cuts, your Adobe software, in terms of programs, and then you've got multiple different file formats from QuickTime right up to ProRes and MXF, etc. And the challenge is how do you mix encryption and security with all these different workflows and different file formats? We were able to build a file system filter driver, which does a very neat handoff between a file which is encrypted and the program which is viewing back the file. And that's on the one hand. And on the other hand, it means that the encryption can stay with the file while it's being worked on in all these multiple workflows.
Mathew, you know as well as I do that as soon as we encrypt a file, the speed of everything slows to a crawl, which prevents me from getting any editing done. How do you fix that problem?
Very good point. And we're very, very sensitive to that issue. And that's why we built an encryption wrapper. So we don't have to transcode the file. We simply apply the wrapper to the file. It's a very light wrapper. It adds no extra size to the file. I mean, it is important to note, of course, that you have to go through that process, but it's very, very little overhead. It's really barely noticeable. Security is a balance. The most important thing is not to interfere with the workflow, but we've seen in the last year some very, very serious security threats. And that is what is worrying people. And I think, on the one hand, you want to have, fast, efficient workflows. But on the other hand, if you have suffered from a leak or a cyber attack, then that's a whole different ballgame. And, loss of reputation, loss of content, loss of funds, that's something that people are really beginning to sit up and listen to.
Help me understand. The file is stored encrypted on the hard disk, and on the fly, it's decrypted when it comes into a Final Cut or a Premiere for editing, and then as it comes back out again, it's encrypted again?
Actually, the encryption stays with it. All we're doing is access control. So, for example, I'm receiving a file. Maybe I'm at a localization house. I'm doing a French translation of a TV title or a movie. I would receive an encrypted file. I would click on it in the normal way, access it with my credentials. So I put in my password. I've got an iLock key, which is identifying me as the user, and it's pinging the server, just checking that I've still got the rights to open that file. I'm not going to see any overhead, any latency. I really won't notice the difference at all. We've been able to perfect this over the months and years because we found that editors are very unforgiving. If there's any delay at all, they are not interested. If you were to ask people who use our content security, they would say, look, we would only use it if it didn't interfere with those workflows.
So what's involved in installing your software?
It's pretty straightforward, actually. If you can imagine, you've got the people doing the encryption and the people receiving or reading the files, if you like. It's what happens is when a project starts, generally on behalf of the content owner, we're asked to contact the studio or the localization house, and we send them an email saying, if you haven't already used MediaSeal, then you just need to click on this link and register yourself one time, and then click, one time restart of your system, and you're good to go forevermore. And I think people feel comfortable that they've got some layer of security which is protecting them.
Okay, well, let's just help me walk through the workflow. I've shot footage. I've got my dailies. My dailies are now sitting on a single hard drive. Let's say it's a terabyte or 4 terabytes. Pick any arbitrarily, strangely large number. And now I apply MediaSeal. It's now got to go through and apply encryption to this wrapper to all of my files before I can start to edit them. How long does that process take?
As I say, it's a really minimal time. It's like the time it takes to copy some content of a file from one folder to the next. I guess it's like that. So if it's a small file, it's ping. If it's a much larger file, you'll just see a very small, quick progress bar going across. It really doesn't add. It's not like transcoding or anything like that.
And when the project is complete, let's say just hypothetically, we don't need to have the storage continue. Can we take the wrapper off so that we have unwrapped footage that could be archived?
Correct. Yeah, we provide all those features. We designed this in conjunction with one of the major film studios. So if you like, it was designed by a studio for studios. We're a technology company, and I don't think we'd ever have been able to know how to get all the GUIs and all the user experience, without having that input.
Mathew, for people who want to learn more about MediaSeal, where can they go on the web?
They go to MediaSeal.com. The bigger company is Fortium, FortiumTech.com.
And that website, there's two of them. The main company is Fortium Tech, FortiumTech, FortiumTech.com. And MediaSeal is MEDIASEAL, MediaSeal.com. And Mathew Gilliat-Smith is the co-founder and CEO of Fortium Technologies. And Mathew, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
Pierson Clair has spent the last decade conducting digital forensic investigations in support of companies who have suffered a breach or other loss of data. His investigative specialties lie in the realm of Mac and mobile devices, and he's currently the Senior Director for Cybersecurity and Investigations at Kroll. Pierson, welcome back.
Good afternoon, Larry. How's it going?
I'm talking to you, and we're talking security. How much more fun could it possibly be?
It is a great life to be in.
Before we talk security, give me a description. What's Kroll?
Kroll is a giant global investigations company. We've been around for 40 years. We have 2,000 dedicated examiners, investigators who work in all facets of investigations, everything from identity theft to due diligence. And I'm proud to be on our cybersecurity and investigations team.
Well, in this show today, we're talking security, and so far this has been just really depressing. I mean, can we put stuff on the web and have it be secure, or should we just give it up?
Well, when we talk about security, it's all about risk management and risk mitigation. If something's on the web, it's out there. In January alone, or December and January together, every Intel processor made since 1995 with a major vulnerability. Is there such thing as security? That's tough to say. Being online, your data's out there.
If that's a true statement, if we are moving to the cloud, increasingly, business critical information is being stored on the cloud, what can we do to protect ourselves?
So there are so many different steps that we can take to protect ourselves. I like to take the analogy of storing your data in the cloud, similar to an apartment that you may rent. If you lock the front door, but leave the back window open and your apartment's broken into, is that the apartment complex's fault, or is that your fault? So frequently we see a misconfiguration of some type of online storage, and you can read these stories in the news week in and week out. And people are so fast to jump to that, well, it's Amazon's fault, it's someone else's fault. Well, the configuration left that back window open. And by leaving that back window open, once somebody walked around the back of the apartment, they figured out they could break in. So security is not just how it's initially configured, it's also that ongoing testing, that ongoing verification, that ongoing validation, whereby you maintain the best level of security that is known about.
For smaller companies that don't have a built-in IT department, are there places they can go to get advice or guidance in terms of how to set up security? What kind of national organizations can we refer to?
There are many different places that have great security advice, whether it's taking a framework, for example, from an organization like NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technologies, or ISO, the International Standards Organization, or even a third-party training group like SANS. Each of these has a wide range of frameworks that you can adopt that include best practices, that include implementation recommendations, so many different things that can help large and small organizations have a better security posture.
Well, let's define a couple terms. You've used security framework, security policy, and I've heard security protocols. How would you define the differences between them, or are they the same thing, just described in different words?
Security framework would be something that would come down from NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, or ISO, the International Standards Organization. And those lay out best practices for many, many different use cases. You might not want your accounting computers being able to talk to your edit bays, as an example. Once you have a framework, then you can set policy. Perhaps no social media on accounting computers, or no BitTorrenting on your edit bays. And so from there, we map from policy, from a framework, and then we implement that with some technical controls. That together create as secure of a posture as you've identified as necessary.
One of the challenges that the companies that listen to the Buzz have is that we all tend to be small. We tend not to have built-in IT departments, and we have got plenty of deadlines to meet without having to worry about security. How much time should we spend with security, and does it require a dedicated IT staff, and what kind of resources do we need to provide for it? With even enterprises having trouble keeping their data secure, what can a small company do to mitigate their risk?
Keeping your own computer up to date. There's a reason that updates are pushed down to computers. They patch a vulnerability. They're like a Band-Aid. They protect you against problems. So let's start local. Let's start with your own computer. Keeping the software up to date. Keeping everything fully patched. And that's the operating system and all of your applications. Then let's talk about those spam emails that you may get, those phishing emails that you may get. And phishing is such a prevalent way of getting into people's data right now. So phishing or social engineering is where you may receive an email that purports to be from maybe your internet service provider, your email provider saying there was a problem with your email account. It's about to be locked out. Or there's suspicious activity on your email account. Click this link. You click the link. It then takes you to a page that looks like the sign-in page. From the sign-in page, you enter your credentials, but you're not actually at your sign-in page for your email provider. You're at some third-party scam site, which now has your email credentials. So frequently we see it's a user who's willingly giving away their credentials. Well, maybe not willingly, but they've clicked and they've provided the credentials. Therefore, all the attacker has to do is then go to their email, go to their Dropbox, go to their fill in the blank, and authenticate as the legitimate user. How do we move to a more secure posture? Be careful where you're entering your credentials. Turn on two-factor authentication. Two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication is probably the single easiest way to protect yourself online. There are 3 different ways that you can authenticate somebody. The first one is something you know. Most commonly, that's a password. But, Larry, if you were to give me your email password right now, how would your email server know the difference between you and me? And it wouldn't, because I have your password, therefore I'm authenticating as you. The next way you authenticate someone is something you have. And that something you have might be a cell phone that can receive a one-time code, a text message. So with so many different online service providers now, whether it's cloud storage, whether it's email, whether it's financial institutions, they offer two-factor authentication, whereby you type in a username and password, and then it sends you a one-time code. That one-time code says, I know that the only person who can receive this is the person who has access to this cell phone, and therefore that authenticates them. The third way is then some type of biometric. We call it something you are. And for most cases, that's more used for maybe building authentication. And once you've done those, then it comes down to the configuration. If you're using some type of online storage and you've not locked it down, and that's to say you've left the bucket or the account storage wide open, well, anybody can walk in. It's like leaving the front door unlocked. So the configuration of your online storage is vitally important. It's also important to note that these companies that you may be paying for the online storage, from time to time, they change how their service operates. So going in every 3, 6, 9, 12 months and doing a security check, a security verification, making sure that everything looks the way it's supposed to. Going back to your original question of, you may not have an IT department, and so many people don't. It's about being aware. It's about slowing down and saying, this looks strange. Let me go run it down. So is that a certain number of hours per week? Not necessarily. Might it be more hours one week than next? Certainly. Deadlines are always looming, but security is kind of the underpinning now of the internet, something that is vitally important. So you do need to invest the time when you identify it's necessary.
Well, let's shift gears. We've been talking about security in general, but Kroll is a company that specializes in security. For smaller companies, does Kroll have anything that could help us maintain security with our own assets?
From a cyber perspective, we work in 3 different verticals, if you will. Before, during, and after. With before, it's trying to help you avoid a breach, trying to help you set up the policy, set up the structures, so that when there is a breach, it's far easier to investigate. The during is when you call us and you say, something very bad has happened. Help me figure out what happened. And then the after is, how do you recover from that? How do you remediate from that? So we have a couple of really clever products. One of them is what we call Cyber Detector, and it's a cyber detector powered by Red Canary. It's a very unique product. It sits alongside conventional antivirus and is very, very low resource. And certainly I know that in the production space, in the media space, resources are everything. You don't want a memory hog. You don't want a processor hog. And so this is a little agent that sits on your computer, and it's a next generation threat intelligence tool. Typically, this is something that you roll out for companies that might have 100 or more employees, because it gives the ability to allow us to be your outsourced SOC or your security operations center. That way we can feed intelligence back into your organization for any type of malicious or otherwise anomalous activity that's happening on your endpoints. Our traditional offering for Cyber Detector is for the 100 or more endpoint category, but that doesn't mean that if there are smaller organizations that have a very high security profile and security need, that the offering may make sense.
For people that want more information about the services that Kroll can provide, where can they go on the web to learn more?
Kroll.com, that's KROLL.com.
And Pierson Clair is the person you've been listening to. He is a Senior Director for Cybersecurity and Investigations at Kroll. And Pierson, as always, thanks for your time.
Thank you so much, Larry.
Here's another website I want to introduce you to, doddleNEWS.com. DoddleNEWS gives you a portal into the broadcast, video, and film industries. It's a leading online resource presenting news, reviews, and products for the film and video industry. DoddleNEWS also offers a resource guide and crew management platform specifically designed for production. These digital call sheets, along with their app, directory, and premium listings, provide in-depth organizational tools for busy production professionals. DoddleNEWS is a part of the Thalo Arts community, a worldwide community of artists, filmmakers, and storytellers. From photography to filmmaking, performing arts to fine arts, and everything in between, Thalo is filled with resources you need to succeed. Whether you want the latest industry news, need to network with other creative professionals, or require state-of-the-art online tools to manage your next project, there's only one place to go, doddleNEWS.com. In his current role as Director of Technology at KeyCode Media, Michael Kammes consults on the latest in technology and best practices in digital media and communications. Hello, Michael. Welcome back.
Hello, Larry. Good to hear your voice, and thank you.
Michael, this evening we've learned about how to keep our files safe locally, the challenges of keeping our files safe in transit, and how to improve security for files stored on the web. You've been listening to the whole show. What's your reaction so far?
I've been listening to this show and in the chat room talking about this on the Digital Production Buzz website, and I think we've heard a lot of great concepts, but I think there's kind of a missing link with those concepts as to how to apply those to the average layperson who isn't transporting a ton of data and needs FileCatalyst or needs to operate on a server level. I think there's some missing glue there.
Okay, what's some of the glue that we're missing?
Well, some of the glue would be, especially for folks in the media and entertainment space, is, you're working on a television show or a film, and you want to get data from on-set back to the mothership, back to where you're going to edit, or back to where the production company is. And all the technologies and concepts they've talked about tonight, your guests have talked about, that can all be incorporated into portable drives, which is a very common way of transporting data securely.
Well, that was a thought that Larry O'Connor mentioned, is it's a whole lot easier to FedEx 8, 10, 15 terabytes of data than try to transfer it over the web. Would you agree with his comment, though, that file transfers over the web are reasonably secure these days?
Well, I think you're the last guest you had on hit it right in the nose, which is, once you put it on the web, there's no guarantee it's going to be okay. We just saw a great, I don't want to say hack, but we just saw the boot code for the iPhone posted online on GitHub, right? If something like that can be hacked or delved into, then what's to say what you're paying $19.95 a month for can't be hacked too? So I'm a big fan of the let's have that abstraction layer and let's not transport it online. Let's do it the old-fashioned way and carry it.
Well, that brings up a bigger point. How can we tell, and we may need to go to another expert to come up with this answer, but how can we tell if we've been compromised? Is it just when somebody else tells us that they're seeing our files on the web?
Well, I think, yes, that's one way of doing it, and one way to thwart that, and this is what a lot of facilities do, I am kind of manipulating your question a little bit, is just watermarking. People are scared of getting in trouble and being blackballed and being, ostracized. So quite often facilities will put someone's name on there, Bob Smith. Well, Bob's not going to take any chances of leaking footage if his name is on that footage. We can also go into forensic watermarking. Philips has technology that does that. So you can't see the watermark, but it's actually embedded in the video. And those kind of, I don't say scare tactics, but scare tactics keep folks away from putting themselves in a situation where they may leak footage. I'm sure, as you also know, many facilities are on lockdown, meaning the computers aren't online. A lot of times they keep the machines in the machine room or centralized room, so you can't plug in a thumb drive. You can't plug in a portable drive in order to get data out.
John Tkacezewski, hang on one second, I'm choking on my glass of water here. John Tkacezewski says that there's a lack of security standards regarding media, unlike where in medicine where HIPAA controls or financial data being transferred. Do you agree with the fact that media needs to have more consistent standards for encryption and security?
Well, there are standards. There's the advanced encryption standard. People who like acronyms have probably heard of AES encryption, 128-bit, 256-bit, and that's a standard for encryption. And just like, codecs, we have the essence, and then we have the wrapper around it. Having this encryption wrapper around your media can adhere to the standards that have already been put out there. And a lot of these hardware-based security protocols we have, and a lot of the software-based ones adhere towards the AES 256-bit encryption, which is very difficult to crack. And NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, have said, yeah, these are pretty much unbreakable.
Although we can't necessarily use that for files which are coming into our editing systems because it would take too much time, generate too much latency if we had to decrypt as it was being played back for editing. So this would be an encryption standard for storage and archiving, correct?
That's correct. It would be to have media locked on set, locked for transport, and then stay locked until you plugged it in, booted up the computer, and then entered in a password. You're completely correct. If you try and do this in real time, there's a lot of latency on the computer, and no one's been able to, for lack of a better term, crack that nut just yet.
Shifting back to the idea of applying our security standards in the real world, what habits do we need to break that are putting our files in jeopardy?
It's a great question. First off is your editing machines, don't put them online. And I know that there's a lot of independent editors who say, look, I need to share stuff via Dropbox and I need to collaborate. Don't unplug it until you need it, then plug it back in, then unplug again. There's nothing wrong with that. In a lot of facilities that can't afford enterprise security, they have an abstraction layer, which means they have a firewall between the switch that controls all the internal data on the network and a switch that goes out to the real world to, hit YouTube or whatever websites you want to hit. And keeping a firewall between those is one more layer of security that prevents folks from getting out and getting in. So that's one way to do it.
Thinking and seeing as you're batting cleanup here, we let you get all the important questions. What would you say are the three most important elements that people should consider when they're looking at setting up a security workflow?
If you have anything that's password protected and that password is shared amongst multiple people, like Dropbox, for example, multiple people can have the same password and same login for a shared account. Don't do that because all it takes is for one person to slip up and things are compromised. Keeping your machines off the internet, that certainly helps quite a bit. And any kind of media that you have on a hard drive that's being transferred from one location to another, look at something like Apricorn. It's Capricorn without the C, and they have portable drives and thumb drives, which are all encrypted, and you can store your data on that.
Well, one of the things I enjoy is watching and listening to your 5 Things podcast. Tell us what's coming up, because I think what you have coming is relevant to our discussion on security and remote editing.
Thank you for that. Yeah, the upcoming episode, which will probably be out later in February, will be on remote editing and things to look forward to in remote editing and why it's such a challenge to do it now in a cost-effective way and still retain security.
Now, do you view remote editing as the same as collaborative editing?
I think the term collaborative gets thrown around quite a bit. Some people would look at Dropbox as being collaborative, which it is in some respect. But when I talk about editing and collaborative editing, I'm looking at shared projects, shared media, shared timelines. So there's a complete flow as opposed to more of a push-pull methodology that you would work with Dropbox. With
the collaborative editing or with the remote editing, do we need to have assets stored locally, or are you accessing assets on the cloud?
It really depends on what system you're going with. There are very few NLEs that support editing from a cloud-based system, but they will support editing from your personal cloud in your own data center back at your office. So it really depends on what NLE you're trying to use and what technology, but more importantly, what kind of budget you have.
And for people that just need to know where you are on the web and watch the next 5 Things episode, where can they go on the web?
2 places. You can check out 5thingsseries.com or my namesake, michaelkammes.com.
That's the number 5 things. Is it 5things.com?
5 Things Series.
5thingsseries.com and michaelkammes.com. And Michael Kammes himself is the voice you're listening to, Director of Technology at KeyCode Media. And Michael, as always, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks so much, Larry.
Take care. Bye-bye. You know, I was just thinking, in the old days, security was a lot easier. We just needed to lock the office door when we left at night. These days, it seems much harder, and there are always trade-offs. As Pierson mentioned, security is a balance between the resources you have available and how likely our files are to be hacked. Often, we get hacked because we aren't paying attention and get caught with a phishing email. Or we get hacked because a disgruntled employee shares private files with the world. Or we get hacked because our cloud storage provider got hacked. Even high-tech security can't fully protect us against stupidity or unhappy employees. But as we learned tonight, we can do more to keep our precious digital files safe, partly by thinking more about security on a daily basis, partly by encouraging our team members to think about security, and partly by harnessing technology to help us protect our files. Just as we've learned over time that we can't archive files simply by storing them on a hard disk and parking it on a shelf, so also we can't ignore security threats. Security does not improve by ignoring it. We need to take an active interest in keeping our systems up to date, avoid making stupid mistakes like sharing login credentials with suspect websites. And we need to harness the power of technology to help keep our files safe. Just a quick personal example on this last point. Recently, I added a new server here at the office, and it didn't work properly. After some research, I tracked the problem to my network switch, where I discovered that the last time I updated its firmware was October of 2010. Looks like I need to pay more attention to my own systems. Security is an ongoing process, not just an event, just something I'm thinking about. I want to thank our guests for this week, Larry O'Connor with OWC, John Tkacezewski with FileCatalyst, Michael Gilliat-Smith of Fortium Technologies, Pierson Clair with Kroll, Michael Kammes with KeyCode Media, and James DeRuvo with doddleNEWS. There's a lot of history in our industry, and it's all posted to our website at digitalproductionbuzz.com. Here you'll find thousands of interviews, all online and all available to you today. And remember to sign up for our free weekly show newsletter that comes out every Saturday. Talk with us on Twitter at DPBuzz and Facebook at digitalproductionbuzz.com. Our theme music is composed by Nathan Doogie Turner, with additional music provided by smartsound.com. Text transcripts are provided by Take One Transcription. Visit takeone.tv to learn how they can help you. Our producer is Debbie Price. My name is Larry Jordan, and thanks for listening to the Digital Production Buzz. The Digital Production Buzz is copyright 2018 by Thalo LLC.
The Digital Production Buzz was brought to you by Keyflow Pro, a simple but powerful media asset manager for collaboration over a network. Download a free 30-day trial at keyflowpro.com.